Hi, and welcome to this mini course on host leadership for teams and for self-leadership as well. Are you ready to party? Well, first, let's do a hopefully fun, reflection. This is called the best self-reflection, and I'd like you to think about what is unique about you that leads you to be so happy, like where you find yourself in your happiest times and your best performing times at work. Try to reflect on a specific time, perhaps at work, perhaps at home, but at work if you can, where you were acting the way you felt you were born to act, being the way you were born to be, aka being your best self, lit up, purpose-aligned, and making it happen. Please pause and think of a time and write it down. All right, so think of that story you just shared. Did you feel enthusiastic? Did you feel in flow, fully engaged, consumed with a sense of purpose? Did you feel like your abilities were contributing, needed, and or helping those around you? So that was an exercise from Daniel Cable called the best self-reflection, as I mentioned. And all of those feelings and sensations I just listed indicate that a special emotional system was activated in your brain. It's called the seeking system. When this system is turned on, you engage in intense and enthusiastic exploration and are so excited to learn. Your curiosity is turned on. You feel a sense of engaged purpose and environmentally engaged aliveness. I'm going to say that again. Environmentally engaged aliveness. How about enthusiastically engaged aliveness, right? Who doesn't want to feel that? And as a leader, even if you are a self-leader, who wouldn't want their team to show up or themselves to show up with an activating seeking system? Another consideration we have as leaders is resilience. And resilience, we're talking about the resilience of the organization, our teams, and our people, the individuals. Here we see that leadership is a key component to resilient organizations. Do you like what you see? What do you like? What do you like that you see on there? So we see a unity of purpose on here, effective partnerships, innovation, and creativity. I like those. Interestingly, the seeking system is one of the 7 primitive emotional systems. It's all about long-term survival. So we know we have a system in there for immediate survival, right? And you might not have heard it this way, but you've definitely felt it. Fight or flight, right? So we have that system built in. And that's called a fear system, incidentally, when we talk about these 7 emotional systems. But think about this for a second. Long-term survival. This is the system that makes us wonder, what's beyond that mountain? What could I build? What could I create? If you want innovators, if you want creativity, if you want unity of purpose, you need to make sure your team is not in that immediate survival mode. So we don't want that fear system turned on because that shuts us down. Negativity shuts us down. You need to get your team into this long-term vision mode, positivity. That's how you open them up. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. Because now we want to see what's going on at a level down from this organizational view. And now we see the dimensions of resilient teams. Notice commonalities to what we see at that organizational level. All right, I want you to answer this. How you feel is how you blank. There's a lot that goes into being a resilient individual. That would be a whole separate presentation. One I'd be happy to do and have done. BT dubs. Suffice it to say, How you feel matters. So let's take a look at those 7 emotional systems. These are all affective circuits deep in mammalian brains. They are all hardwired in there. Okay, so here are the 7. If these all had a battle, which one do you think would win? Yes, fear. The fear system is quite powerful. It does beat out the others. We are wired first to survive, then to thrive. We saw that play system in there, right? Did you know that young rats play? We know this because they laugh. In fact, a researcher named Dr. Jaak Panksepp put young rats together, and over the course of 5 minutes, they invited each other to play, on average, about 50 times. And he would take them out from their separate environments and put them together, and then they were playing and laughing. And he had to use special instruments to hear their giggles and laughs, by the way. But then one morning, before he put them together in that play environment, he put cat hair into the environment. And what do you think happened? That's right, no play. Not for 4 days. And when they finally played again, they never got back to that 50 invite average. They only got to 35. That's the power of the fear system. So when we look at one of the old school styles of leadership, here's what that looks like. How do you think this team feels? Stressed. Stress affects us on the subcellular, cellular, and systemic levels. And look way over there on the right. Physical and cognitive decline. We don't have access to our smarty pants executive brain at the top of its game. We have an exec in a brain fog who's forgetful and can't make good decisions for us. Have you ever made a bad decision when you were stressed? I once bought this giant guitar, like an Elvis guitar purse. So it wasn't an actual guitar. It was like meant to be a purse or a bag, and it was shaped like a guitar. And I bought it in Vegas at a time in my life when I was working at a pretty toxic work environment and always stressed out. And yes, if you were wondering, alcohol was involved in this equation, but I've done and bought some really stupid stuff when I was stressed. Moreover, when we are constantly stressed, our emotional seesaws are tipped all the way over to the side of negativity. We all have access to a spectrum of consciousness and cognition, but when we are in ever stressed mode, we are trapped down at the lower end of the spectrum, face down, looking at a black abyss. So these graphics are from the Scientific American magazine and the National Institute of Health. And it really shows that smarty pants brain shutting down. So in case you were like, cute cartoon, Jessica, I'm not buying it. It's 1,000,000% true. And it's not just that our brains suffer. Here's a list of stress-related diseases and conditions. Not to mention that chronic stress is linked to the 6 leading causes of death: heart disease, cancer, lung ailments, accidents, cirrhosis of the liver, and suicide. We know that people feel better and perform better and more sustainably when 4 basic needs are met: renewal, so that's physical; value, emotional; focus, mental; and purpose, spiritual. For example, concerning stress, meeting a single need prompts only a modest 6% reduction in people's stress. But meeting 3 reduces stress by 30%, and meeting all 4 leads to a 72% drop. And this comes from the Harvard Business Review. Stress, fear, negativity, and negative thinking decrease blood flow to your brain. What type of emotions run rampant in your workplace culture? Which brain do you want in the game? Our recommendation is to focus on neuropositivity. We're not referring to a blanket term positivity and faking smiles and sunshine. No. We actually recommend looking for authentic positivity, and there are 10 key forms to look for: joy, gratitude, serenity, interest, hope, pride, amusement, inspiration, love, and awe. And we're not saying that you should try to eradicate negativity. It's a part of life. We simply want to outweigh the negatives with the positives. And if you decide to notice, you will notice more of the micro moments of positivity that come your way. Our brains do that work for us in the background, like a bouncer at a club. We need to tell it what to let in. We're exposed to so many stimuli that our brains filter most of it out. So just decide. And then these little bubbles of positivity will appear before you and pop pretty instantly. So unlike negativity, which is stronger and longer lasting, positivity is quite fleeting. So what's different about this diagram this time? Those weights, right? Or as my daughter would say, lub, lub, lub. Negativity's effect is stronger and longer lasting than positivity's. Again, we are built to survive. And so anything that could potentially harm us, our brains hit the record button into our memories, and anything that's similar to that will just get us fired up, get that fear system fired up. So ever see ankle weights like these? One negative velcros to another and pulls you down. So the tip is to arm yourself by trying to hit 3 positives for every 1 negative. Again, no faking. And then also know that you'll often, very, very often, need to apply some oomph to Super Mario hop yourself out of negativity's abyss. So sing it with me. Do, do, do. Do, 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 do. And if you want to hop around the room, I highly recommend that. The cartoon abyss I made is actually physiologically accurate. See? Super clear, right? Okay, I'm joking. All right, let's look at the upside down world. Here is what's going on physiologically in our bodies. According to the polyvagal theory, we have access to 3 states. When we're in green, we feel safe. It's the social engagement system. We have access to a range of feelings like calm and joyful, interested. We can rest and digest, relate and create. So you might hear rest and digest or stay and play, social engagement system. I call it having the beast brain, beast mode, even though I'm not very much of a beast. But yeah, that's green. And you can see all the other things going on there. But what's good to note, and I'm focusing on neuropositivity right now, but this is a full body physiological chart. This theory covers not only just our emotions, but what's going on for our body. So our brains are getting blood flow when we're in green to the more cognitive parts of our brains, the more creative, problem solving, all the parts that make us connected to each other. And again, we have access to all those bubbles of positivity that we saw. Moreover, our immune system is turned on. Our digestive system is up and running. Our reproductive system is working. So it's a whole body thing that's going on here, not just emotions. And then if we sense danger, we head to yellow. So we first will look for cues of safety from those around us if we're starting to slip from green to yellow. And if we don't get that sense of safety, we're going to head into yellow. And we mobilize for fight or flight. But now the emotional range that we have access to is limited to feelings along the lines of fear, anger, and rage. So just take a look at this diagram that Ruby Jo Walker put together on her website, rubyjowalker.com. And again, we see that it's not just about our emotions, right? We are now shutting off our immune system, digestive system, and reproductive system, and we're decreasing the blood flow to the smarty pants area of our brain. So if you think back to the diagram we saw with the NIH and the Scientific American chart, that's what that was showing. We're not getting blood flow to the smarter parts of our brain. And then we have red, which occurs when we think we're really about to actually die, and we freeze or we feign death. And this is where we see dissociation, numbness, depression, helplessness, shame, shutdown, hopelessness, preparation for death, feeling trapped. And we have a full body physiological response there as well. And if you hear stories of people who unsuccessfully tried to commit suicide, the commonality is, I didn't see any other option, because they're so down that abyss. That's why I created the cartoon, to say you're looking face down the abyss. That's literally all you could see, versus if you're lying on your back looking up at the bubbles and all the possibilities and what you could build for the future. So I like to say, get to green. And I love sharing the polyvagal theory because it's very easy. Green, yellow, red, you could size people up based on how they're talking, their body language, what emotions they're showing, etc. But I did want to mention Dr. Laurel Mellon's work, and she created something called emotional brain training. And she researched 5 brain states, with brain state 1 being the optimal state. So that's what I would call the greenest of green. And when I heard her speak, she told us about one of her clients, and the client was a hospital, and they wouldn't let their doctors see patients until they were in brain state 1. That's the doctor I want, right? And moreover, her app gives tools based on which brain state you're in. So again, if you're all the way down in 5, if you look on the screen here, which is probably a very red state, you don't have access to the parts of your brain that you do when you're in 4, 3, 2, or 1, right? So she made brain state specific tools. So that's super cool. So her book is called Wired for Joy, but check out her other works as well if you're interested. And it really maps to the polyvagal theory. She's just calling it something different. So in summary, keep them green, keep yourself green, keep them up with the bubbles, keep the blood flowing, going where it needs to go. Get to that brain state 1, as Dr. Mellon says, or get to green, as I like to say. And what else was I going to say? You could look at this. This is a very informal little diagram where you could say, like, where am I the most? Where do I spend most of my time? And I have a worksheet that walks through, circle, put a dot next to how many times you felt this, and then circle and underline or whatever. So if you want to play around with this. But there is also positivityratio.com, where you could take a test and get a more official, from Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, a more official scientific answer as to where you spend most of your time. All right, so now we're going to talk about types of power. And the source of this is from the Guide to the PMBOK V6. And we want to look at which ones are good for our brains and our overall physiology. So I want you to think about which ones are good for our brains and our bodies, or our overall physiology. And if this was the type of power that your leader had, these were potential types of power that your leader had, which party would you want to attend? Pick 3. And whose party would you want to avoid? Pick 3. Now, you could pause if I didn't give you enough time there. What type of power would you like to be known for? And would people want to be a part of your party? Would they want to connect with you? Speaking of connecting, when we think about connecting our individuals and teams to a shared purpose, mission, vision, etc., we could be a hammer, hammering it in. These are our shared values, bang, bang, bang. And this guy is saying, really? When did you ask me? Or we could find true connection and bake in the connection in all its cakey glory. Before we saw how to light up the seeking system, And that connected us to who we are at the core, what we value, our sense of purpose, our sense of fulfillment. So why not start there and then connect that truth to what we put in a team charter, to what our department mantra is, to our organizational mission, values, and purpose. So if you think that sounds more fulfilling, more motivating, say yes. In his book Drive, Daniel Pink wrote about Motivation 3.0, which is an intrinsic motivation based on autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Purpose is the desire to do something that has meaning and is important. Autonomy is the desire to be self-directed. And mastery is the urge to get better skills, or better and betterer, as I like to say. We're going to look at 4 leadership analogies. Command and control. If you, the leader, are my controller, who am I? What about a heroic leader? If you, the leader, are my hero, who am I? And servant leaders. If that's the servant leader, who's the guy on the chair? And now we come to host leadership. If you are my host leader, who am I to you? As a host, you have access to serve and to take charge. So if you've ever hosted a party, say yes. Did you serve? Did you also take heroic charge? Of the 4 analogies, which do you think is the most brain-friendly? Even if you think about me saying, hey, guess what? You're a leader now. That might make you feel like a little, that in your stomach, you're like that, your stomach drops a little, you're like, what? I'm a leader now? But if I said, guess what? You're a host leader. Does that sound a little better? That's brain-friendly on the receiving end of being dubbed a leader, but it's also more friendly on the receiving end because now we have a host-guest analogy. So let's look at some of the PMBOK recommendations regarding leadership. Team leadership. Qualities and skills of a team leader. And the source of this is the Guide to the PMBOK V6. If you don't know, the PMBOK is the project management body of knowledge. And there's a book called The Guide to the Project Management Body of Knowledge. So we just call it Guide to the PMBOK. And they're up to V6, so that's what that is. Anyway, the quality and skills of a team leader are being a visionary, being optimistic and positive, being collaborative, managing relationships and conflict by building trust, satisfying concerns, seeking consensus, balancing competing and opposite goals, applying persuasion, negotiation, compromise, and conflict resolution skills, developing and nurturing personal and professional networks, continuously developing and applying acumen. Communicating by spending sufficient time communicating, managing expectations, accepting feedback graciously, giving feedback constructively, asking and listening, being respectful, helping others retain their autonomy, being courteous, kind, honest, trustworthy, loyal, and ethical. Exhibiting integrity and being culturally sensitive, courageous, a problem solver, and decisive. Giving credit to others where due. Being a lifelong learner who is results and action oriented. Do these sound host-like? And there's more. Focusing on the right things, prioritizing, differentiating, etc. Having a holistic and systemic view of the project or what's going on in your world. So at any organization, we don't want to be so siloed. We want to knock down those silos and connect and appreciate the value that the other teams are co-creating with us. So if you're not a project manager, this still applies. Being a critical thinker and a change agent. Being able to build effective teams, be service-oriented, have fun, and share humor effectively with teams. What? Have fun and share humor effectively with teams. So there's a video I love on how humor saved the world that Karen Buxman put together. And she talks about the Cuban Missile Crisis and how there was this deadlock and they were getting nowhere with the negotiations. And then one of the delegates told a joke and he said, "What's the difference between communism and capitalism?" And he said, "In capitalism, man screws another man, and in communism, it's vice versa," or something like that. Anyway, you had to be there. But they all laughed, and then they solved their conflict. So that's a really cool example because it also ties back to the brain states we were looking at. Laughter could bring us back to green, and having these moments of humor and fun could help get us to green. That green is also the social engagement system. So really building trust and engaging and connecting with one another is going to get us to green. Here's my something witty and thought-provoking. That's what my boss told me to write on the chalkboard. So when we think about the culture prescription from the PMBOK, organizational, stakeholder, and customer culture, trusting working relationships, and a no-blame culture. Does this sound like a good party? And then we have personalities. So for the team leaders, personality refers to the individual differences in characteristic patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. Characteristic traits of the manager team leader are authentic, courteous, creative, cultural. You have EI, emotional intelligence, intellectual, managerial, political, meaning make it happen, service-oriented, social, systemic, where you understand and could build systems, again, from the PMBOK V6. But what about self-leadership? Self-leadership is the ability to consciously influence your own thoughts and behavior in order to achieve your personal goals or an organization's objectives. That's a great definition. I found it on cleverism.com. So here's some of the things that we might want to step in and influence inside of us. So this is where I call it the inner game. And I've been calling them BWATs, which stand for beliefs, energy, words, habits, actions, thoughts, and stances. And the stances are physical, cognitive, and emotional. And those stances really tie to like where we're going to fall in terms of polyvagal theory and that green, yellow, red as well. So here we are, if we're these little icebergs floating around saying hi to each other, we are, exposing some things to the others we come in contact with. Others are completely hidden inside. But what's interesting is at this neuroceptive level, so neuroception is something that precedes perception. So our body's just working so hard. There's 11 million stimuli that our subconscious is kind of looking at for us and screening and then deciding like only 40 of those are going to make it onto our conscious radar. And there's just so much going on. At that neuroceptive level, we could detect biological rudeness and something will feel off to us and we don't even know why. Because something that was invisible to our conscious awareness, like we didn't perceive it. So before perception, our body was like, oh, that's rude, right? And so this is really interesting to get into this. And some things are going to be hidden and some things are going to be like kind of hidden, kind of not, right? So if you think about all these things on screen and pause this, think about which ones show. Which ones are we showing up in the world as and other people seeing? Like directly, indirectly, what's maybe, maybe not. And when I talk about self-leadership, it's like, wait, that when you lead, you need to have this team and I'm only one person. But we all have our past self, our present self and our future self, right? And when we're here in the present, I don't know about you, but I have this little good gremlin being like, hey, Jessica, eat the healthy foods. It makes you feel so good. Stick to your eat to live program. And then I have this other little gremlin inside going, cookies, 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 right? So I need to manage these characters. Moreover, as these little voices in my head and these little gremlins are popping in there with their great ideas, I'm kind of watching this, right? And so I could take on many different voices in my head. Okay, so wait, why are men with nets coming to take me away right now? No, but I think you could understand that we have our personalities and we tend to be like really proud of who we are. But there's like hangry Jessica, there's got a great night's sleep Jessica, there's my dogs are getting their dental appointments done and had to get put on under anesthesia, so I am peeing my pants Jessica. And there's so many different Jessicas that show up that it's not a true case of multiple personalities, but like I have these different egoic states within me, right? So navigating that, and from that cleverism definition, having that ability to consciously influence my own thoughts and behavior and all these be whats is going to help me lead myself. So that was the introduction to host leadership, meaning the intro leading into actually talking about host leadership. So here we go, from soup to nuts. The first thing you need to know about being a host leader is we have two moves. Sometimes we're taking a step forward, and sometimes we're taking a step back. Step forward and back and forward and back, and you're doing the cha-cha. If you could tell me what movie that's from, the first person who does, I will send you a prize, and it'll be really cool. It'll be a wrist roller, a mini foam roller that you could massage your wrist whenever you want. And by wrist, I mean wrist. Okay, so we have two moves, stepping forward and stepping back. You're stepping forward, meaning like, here we are putting together this party. And stepping back means you're planning the party, you're consulting with a trusted friend who throws good parties and you want to get some ideas and advice, or you're reflecting on how that party went and how I could do that even better next time, better and better. And then as a host, you have 6 roles. So think about it. You want to throw a party? Well, you have this idea and you're like, hey, I want to have a party. So you're initiating. Then you have this guy. He's saying, come to my party, right? So we're the inviter. Earlier, I mentioned that in his book Drive, Daniel Pink wrote about motivation 3.0, which an intrinsic motivation based on autonomy, mastery, and purpose was what he was talking about in this book. Motivation 2.0 is akin to the command and control, fear-based style leadership. It's that stick part of the carrot and the stick type of equation. But host leadership maps perfectly to the brain in this motivation 3.0 mode. By extending invites, hosts give their guests a sense of control. When we feel like we are not in control, the amygdala, which is in our brains, sounds the alarm. And that's what starts that whole cascade of sending us into fight or flight. But once we have the sense of control, our amygdala calms down. If we let that alarm go off, we're ultimately turning off our prefrontal cortexes, or the smarty pants part of our brain, and we don't want that. So whereas the command and control leadership turns on the fear system and shuts off the best parts of our brain, using a host leader approach combined with motivation 3.0 leads to activation of the seeking system. So we're extending that invitation. And then here, what's that? Would you want to come to a party in this space? We have the space creator, or we think about maybe we're not really picking out a new floor every time we're throwing throwing a party. But this was the best picture I could buy on Adobe stock at the time. But we're planning the space for our party in the physical sense, but also in the emotional sense. So host leadership is laden with practices that map to the best practices from the science of positive psychology. For example, the recommendation to start all meetings by focusing on what is going well. And the PMBOK advises to create a blame-free environment and an environment of trust. We see this too in IDLE, the latest iterations of IDLE. The PMBOK wants PMs or project managers to be service-oriented, have fun, and share humor effectively with team members, be respectful, helping others retain their autonomy, being courteous, kind, honest, trustworthy, loyal, and ethical. Also, doesn't want managers to be overworking their teams. So all those things create a great emotional space. Then we have this role. What does that look like? In what ways do you think host leaders may take on the role of a gatekeeper? So one example from the Agile world would be a Scrum Master. And Scrum Masters basically let the team do the work they committed to doing. And if anyone else is coming by to annoy them or say, change this or that, or I have another great idea, or I need this person to do X, Y, Z, the Scrum Master's job is to be like, nope, 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 nope. And you do that in the nicest way possible, but that's the gatekeeper part of being a Scrum Master. And then another role of the host is shown on this screen. And let's say these are two party guests. So what do you think the host did? Introduce them, right? So this is the connector role of a host leader. Here's where we see host leaders breaking down silos, mending and building relationships, creating new, productive, and positive relationships. And then what's this role? There's the host. Let's say, who should we say is the host? Let's say the woman all the way on the right is the host. So this is the role of co-participating in the party. So here's where the host leader is using active listening and facilitating and actively participating in the party. Those were 6 roles that we talked about: initiator, space creator, connector, inviter. Oh, I'm going in the wrong direction. Ha, 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 ha. Did you notice? Did you notice? All right. Initiator, inviter, space creator, gatekeeper, connector, co-participator. And now when we think about being a host leader, let's look at the 4 positions. This means like rooms or places that we might end up when we're throwing our party. So where is she? She's on the stage, right? Thanks for coming to my party. I would like to introduce so-and-so and so-and-so to come to the dance floor, or whatever it is. On the balcony, the host is watching the party and ready to intercede if needed, or come down during key points, like maybe to come on stage and announce that we want people to dance. And so we're up on the balcony watching and ready to come in and swoop in if needed. And then here we have among the people. So again, this is a place where we could be, wherever that party is in the space, we're among the people. And then lastly, in the kitchen, planning, consulting with our best friend, our BFF, even if that BFF happens to have pause, and getting ideas for the next party. So those are the 4 positions: on the stage, on the balcony, among the people, and in the kitchen. So I hope you liked this introduction to host leadership. There is a book called Host Leadership, and I recommend that book. And what else was I going to say? There is a PDF that I have for you where you could reflect on these roles and which ones sound the most like you in your work life and in your personal life. And let me know what you think. And we will be doing more host leadership trainings, and I hope to see you there. Thank you again.